Hare Krishna. On behalf of Evolve Pune team, today I welcome you to a journey of Gita Essence series, and we have reached to our 16th chapter or the episode 16. And today's episode is about the divine and demonic. So, in today's episode, His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhuji is going to explain through the chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita about the qualities of divine and demonic nature, how to understand about it, how we can identify it, and how we can maybe correct also in the due course of time. Yesterday, Prabhuji talked about the chapter 15, which was on the spiritual world. We could get the glimpse of the spiritual world through the chapter 15, which was the yoga of the Supreme Person. We could understand how this materialistic world is just the inverted image of the spiritual world. However, our ultimate destination is to go there. And the process is, first of all, to understand ourselves. So today's session is more about understanding ourselves, understanding what kind of qualities are there inside us and how we can understand them and later on improve them. So I think today's episode is going to be more about the self-management practices, the divine and demonic nature. Without much ado, I request His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhuji to take over today's session and take us to this journey of understanding ourselves. Over to you, Madan Sundar Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother Dipasha. And we thank and welcome everyone who have joined us for today's program. So we'll start with a prayer. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So once again, we welcome each and every one of you for today evening discussion. We are on the 16th episode of Gita Essence series, which also implies we are on the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So those of you who have continued their journey along with us from the last 16 days, we sincerely express our gratitude to each one of you and wish to congratulate that you are coming almost to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. So to begin with, yesterday we had a discussion on the subject matter of spiritual world. Srimad Bhagavatam and texts like Brahma Samhita, they describe that this whole creation is divided into two parts, of which one part is represented by the material world or the material universe where we all reside today. And this part is only the 1/4 of this whole complete creation. Then question arises, what is the other 3/4 part? And that is what is called as spiritual world. The place of Sat, Chit and Ananda, that is called as spiritual world. And the place of Dukhalayam and Ashashvatam is called as material world, as Lord Shri Krishna explained in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So the spiritual world is a place of Sat, Chit and Ananda. And Krishna describes that actually that is our real home. So if that is our real home, that is our real position, then we should definitely have an hankering for such Chit and Ananda. Yes or no? If that is our natural position. What does Sat means? Sat means eternity. So how many of you agree? Nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to live as long as possible. Of course, do not consider the exceptions where somebody is undergoing mental trauma and whatnot. In general, nobody wants to die. And there are hundreds and thousands of examples in the scriptures about the history, about the stories of great, great people who didn't want to die and they performed severe, severe austerities. And fact is, we have so much medical facilities, so much medicine and whatnot, so much discussion on the media and the news about it. Is why? Because nobody wants to die. So Sat, it is Asat, that is Sat. Chit, knowledge. How many of you agree? Everyone is always hankering for knowledge. Yes or no? Well, it's difficult for you to comprehend, but let me give you. When we talk about knowledge, generally we consider knowledge to be our school education or college education. If that is what education or knowledge for all of you, then most of you would be saying no. Somehow I tolerated those 20 years of my life. I don't want to talk about those school or college life again. We are not talking about that. Knowledge means curiosity to know what is happening. Now, how many of you agree? All of you are eager to acquire more and more knowledge. What is the whole social media? What is this the news industry? Is all about that, where they keep throwing pieces of news to us, talking about this happened there, this happened where, and this is the news. So we have a curiosity to know, and that is the nature of the soul. Once again, indicates that our real position is somewhere else. In this situation, we just have a desire, but that cannot be fulfilled because it is the Khalayam Shashvatam. And the third nature is Ananda, bliss, which is the foundation of all our actions. It's a base of all our activities. Whatever we do is to get happiness. And all of these things are available to the fullest extent without any inhibition or limitation at our real home, which is called a spiritual world. So I hope you all agree with this and understand. Unfortunately, all of us have been put into this material world, which is compared to a prison house. Just like a prisoner is sent behind the prison house, similarly, all of us have been sent to this prison house known by the name of material world. And what's our crime? Is simple. Crime is not simple, but to understand is simple, and that is the misuse of free will. We, at some point of time, had misused our free will, or else became envious of the Supreme Lord, where we wanted to, or we developed a desire to become the Lord. And therefore, to fulfill that desire, because in spiritual world, there is no envy, there is no competition, there is one Lord and everyone is servant. And in different relationship with Dasa, Sakya, Shanta, Vasalya, Madhurya, Rasa. However, when we come to material world, we have been sent here to fulfill this desire of ours to become the Lord of all. And I guess we all would agree, if you have looked around the world, even if you think about it in today's context, everyone, people who you know of, you can see everyone is striving to become the master of all. Nobody is striving to become the servant of any. And therefore, there is a struggle for existence because everyone is trying to become the master. When everyone is trying to become a master, it definitely leads to envy, hatred, competition, and troubles arising because of it. And therefore, everyone is suffering today. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? That there is a strong, deep rooted lordship mentality within each one of us, and every living entity, every human being I'm addressing at this point in time, is proud of what they have and desiring to acquire more. Like there is a saying in English, even a pauper is proud of his penny. And if you put into a Hindi movie dialogue, रिश्ते में हम तुम्हारे बाप लगते हैं, नाम है शहंशाह. So everyone thinks like that of himself. So this only leads to exploitation, and because we desired it, therefore we are put into this material world, And as we continue to desire more of this lordship mentality, where we compete with the Lord and every living entity, to that much, to that degree, we extend our stay in the prison house. And our desire to lord over this material world is fulfilled by awarding us from 8.4 million species of life, and we get a chance to travel into the 14th planetary system where we are is called as Bhuvar. This is called Bhuloka, Bhuvar, Swarga, Tapa, Jana, Mahar, Satyalok, and then we have a lower planetary systems like that. So here it is so interesting that we find people become so attached, so attracted to their tiny dwellings and possessions. Just like, have you seen dogs fighting on the street? And how many of you literally, you know, I'm not saying you're laughing in that sense, but how many of you think this is such a foolish act of the dogs? They keep on barking at each other, claiming that this land is mine, where you know that the land belongs to you, isn't it? If it is a society property, it belongs to the society. If it is your own lawn, it's your lawn. But the dogs bark at the other dog as if it's their property. So, how many of you consider it to be a foolish act? Yes or no? It's a foolish act, totally. And we all probably laugh at or we consider it that way. Just like we look at the action of the dogs who are claiming it to be their property and screaming at another dog who have entered their territory, similarly, the higher beings, when they look at us, they also laugh, and they really laugh a lot. Looking at our situation, we are fighting for a no man's land at India-China border, or some tract of land at Kashmir or elsewhere, or within the society. When the society buildings are built, they fight for even an inch of land, and there's a lot of barking happens, which means the fight happens like that. So just like a dog is claiming at his own property which belongs to someone else, similarly we are claiming this as to be our property which belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In essence, Lord Shri Krishna explains in the 15th chapter through the analogy of a banyan tree that Arjuna, everything in this world is temporary, is a reflection of the real home, that is the spiritual world. Do not get cheated. Give up your attachment to this world by the weapon of knowledge and cut this deep rooted banyan tree, and that is the way of your progress. But how do we take shelter of the Lord? Without taking shelter of the Lord, we cannot make progress. So therefore, Lord Shri Krishna explains Arjuna, once a person understands that I am the maintainer, it is I who maintains their body, it is I who maintains their subtle body, it is I who nourishes their soul, then definitely a person will come and take my shelter. Finally, Lord Shri Krishna concludes the 15th chapter, which is a very, very important chapter once again, where the three Shloki Gita, where the essence of Vedanta Sutras are explained, and the gist of it is devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest form of service that can be performed by a mankind. And like this, the 15th chapter ends. Now we come to the 16th episode or the chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Shri Krishna explains that Arjuna, there are two kinds of living entities which are found in this world. One is called as divine, other is called as demoniac. Do you remember in chapter 7, Lord Shri Krishna said there are two kinds of beings, one surrenders unto me and one does not surrender unto me? And that is a discussion which is going to happen here in a more elaborate way. So, to help you connect with this, how many of you have an experience like this woman in the poster, where from one ear you hear puss, 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 the sound coming where they're saying, don't do it, this is sinful act. And from the other ear you hear another puss, 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 and the other side is saying, no, you do it. Don't you realize there is so much sense enjoyment in it? You need to do it. Otherwise, how would you enjoy your life? This is the only life. And this side is saying, no, 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 you'll do it. You'll incur sinful activity. Didn't you hear in Gita Essence sessions, there is a law of karma? It's called vikarma. And this guy says, no, don't you remember what your teachers taught you in school and colleges? Don't believe this Hare Krishna walas. They tell you anything and everything. And again, this guy said, no, 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 no. You need to hear Bhagavad Gita is a fact. You cannot doubt Hare Krishna walas. They teach you the truth. And again, this side said, no, no, no. Don't believe that bald guy. He sees anything and everything. No, you need to hear. And life is a person who was crazy. I mean, I'm not a crazy person, but I sounded like that right now, giving that example. So, how many of you kind of agree this is what is a situation that we all kind of face, where there's constant voice, two different voices that we get to hear, and this is the subject matter which is being elaborated in this chapter under the title of Divine and Demoniac. So, in this chapter, we learn, to begin with, it is explained that how in the previous ages the distinction between the divine and demoniac was very clear. Because today it has become a little difficult. People find it difficult to find. Even the demon says, I'm divine. At least Hiranyakashipu never claimed himself divine. He was proudly saying himself demon. Like his son Prahlad Maharaj used to say, you're the best of the Asuras. So even Asur Raj Hiranyakashipu knew he's Asura. But even the Asura today thinks, no, I'm godly. So there is a little confusion today. So in previous ages, there was a distinctive line to understand what is divine and demoniac. Why in Satyuga, divine and demonic lived on different planets. In Treta Yuga, they lived on the same planet, like Lord Ram and Ravana. In Dwapar Yuga, they lived on the same planet, like Kauravas and Pandavas. And in Kali Yuga, the divine and demonic propensities are found within the heart of us, of living entity. Therefore, it becomes very difficult to identify, am I divine or am I demoniac? Sometimes I feel like I'm acting as a demoniac, sometimes I feel like I'm acting like divine, but nobody wants to say I'm demoniac because there is some divine proportion in it, and people believe like this. So, so does the line to or the dividing line is becoming more and more faint, wherein people are becoming more and more confused. In other words, people are cultivating more and more demoniac propensities. So in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna once again draws the line very clearly and explains who lies beyond the line, means divine, and who are within the line, which means the demoniac. So here Lord Shri Krishna describes the attitude, the symptoms, the nature, and the behavior of the divine and demoniac. In terms of divine, Lord Shri Krishna describes their qualities, 26 qualities. For demoniac, Lord Shri Krishna particularly elaborates their attitudes and behaviors, because that is what we need to understand thoroughly about ourselves and how we are acting demoniacally, so that we can fix it and walk on the path of the righteousness, as they say. So to begin with, as usual, the acronym for the 16th chapter is DOG, dog. To begin with, where Hare Krishna. Looks like our neighbor's dog, isn't it? I just realized our neighbor's dog is exactly like this. You will probably hear him in action in some time. So to begin with, D stands for divine, L, demoniac. The divine qualities means they elevate our consciousness and they help us progress in our spiritual journey. Whereas the demoniac qualities result in degradation. And these are the result of nature and nurture, which means whatever qualities we have right now is because of our past life actions and also nurture of this life. What kind of qualities we have cultivated. So whatever situation you are in right now, divine or demonic, whatever weightage you have, is because of your nature, guna and karma, which you have got it from your past life actions or reactions as a result, and the qualities that you have nurtured by your choices in this life. So we undoubtedly carry impressions from our previous lives. However, our willpower, determination, and choices also decides what kind of qualities we cultivate in this lifetime. So here Lord Shri Krishna discusses 26 such qualities. So I have not written it on the slide, so bear with me. I'll read out from Bhagavad Gita directly. What are the 26 qualities? Will not go in all, but give you a little bit just of some of those qualities. So here, Lord Shri Krishna describes around 26 qualities of saintly person, or you can say a saintly qualities. Now, this does not necessarily means that a saintly person would have it in all these qualities. In fact, Srila Prabhupada describes that these qualities manifest or must be practiced according to one ashrama. There are four ashramas: brahmachari ashram, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa ashram. So some of these qualities have to be particularly practiced of that particular ashram. And other qualities are but genuine qualities that are manifested in the heart of a sincere practitioner. So, what are these qualities which are described? And these qualities also indicate, or they're also a born of your particular mode of interaction. So, the divine qualities refers to which are born of your interaction with the mode of goodness. So, those who have cultivated mode of goodness would have these kind of qualities, have the potential to have it. But those who are in mode of passion, ignorance, for them it's just not possible. It's very, very difficult. So, what are these qualities? Just to name some of them, Krishna says, Abhayam, fearlessness. For a grahastha to have it is not that easy. They definitely have anxiety, concerns of security for the family life, for the family well-being and whatnot. But primarily, this quality of fearlessness should be cultivated by a sannyasi. Why fearlessness? Because sannyasi, the platform of sannyasi means one who has realized the self and realized the super soul. In other words, he understands, I am never alone. I'm always in the association of the super soul, and undoubtedly becomes fearless. So, like that, one example of fearlessness. Cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Of course, this is part of all the ashrams, whichever ashram you are. Then the fourth or the fifth quality mentioned is charity. Once again, I'm not reading all the 26 qualities. Feel free to read it by yourself. 16th chapter, verse number 1 to verse number 3. Charity. Now, the quality of charity or this disposition must be specifically cultivated by grahasthas. Grahasthas in English mean householders, which means the married men or a woman. So, among all the ashram, brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas ashram, that's not their responsibility to cultivate charity as much as a grahastha. For them, for other three ashram, the charity is of rendering service, giving knowledge. But grahastha is the one who makes the charity of the wealth, which is the result of his work. So charity is something which we need to cultivate in our life. Then there is a quality like self-control, which is common for all the four platforms, depending on different terms and conditions for each of them. Then there is a performance of sacrifice. Again, this is primarily for grahastha, because performance of sacrifice requires good amount of wealth and also includes charity, once again, to brahmanas, feeding of prasadam, things like that. Then there are qualities like austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, sanity of mind, no fault finding, compassion, no greed, gentleness, modesty, steady determination. You can understand by just the names of these qualities, this indicates on the platform of goodness. If you have understood the subject of modes, this is where these qualities arises on the platform of goodness, not of passion and ignorance. So, how do we develop these qualities? How do we cultivate? We have to take association of the people who have it. Only in the association of people who have these qualities, we can actually cultivate these qualities. First, second, by cultivating mode of goodness, and third, the most important, is becoming a sincere practitioner of Krishna consciousness. Lord blesses us with all these divine qualities. Like this 26 qualities are being explained. And what is a symptom of a divine person? You may say that, Prabhu, I have seen this quality in that person, this person, and all. But once in a while, we may show some of these qualities of compassion, fearlessness, and whatnot. But what exactly is a symptom is the steady, practice of spiritual culture, and this kind of qualities are not a one-time show. In other words, a person who leads a regulated spiritual life is said to have or said to possess these qualities. Who is fixed on his determination, does not waver from his spiritual culture or practices. Only such a person can claim to have these qualities or can acquire these qualities. How many of you have an experience of people like this? Maybe if not, or yes. If not, then we definitely need to find such saintly people who have this, and that is how we cultivate it. Next, ahead, Lord Shri Krishna now introduces a subject matter with which probably we can relate very easily, which is called as demonic qualities in the fourth verse. Krishna says, what are demonic qualities? Dambho darpo vimanascha krodha parushamevacha. Dambha, pride. Now, what is this pride? Where the person wants to make a show of his religion and spiritual practice, but he himself do not follow the principles. When he comes in public, he acts very religious. He speaks about God, or he speaks about dharma, but in his own personal life, he doesn't have a practice at all. So it's just to maintain his status quo, and to be praised by others. That is what is described as pride. Darpa is arrogance. What is the difference between pride and arrogance? Arrogance means you have something of which you become proud. So what is so there? See, English you may not have much difference, but Sanskrit have a difference. Dambo means you don't have yet you're proud. Darpa means you have and then you become proud. That is the difference between Dambo and Darpa. Abhiman, which means to Abhiman. I would say where a person demands respect, not commands respect. People should respect me, should show respect to me. Krodha, angry, where people become angry for very, very petty issues. How many have that experience? At least I have seen, not here. I remember while driving back in Delhi on the street sometimes, if you're driving your car on the street and let's say on the local streets, and there's somebody walking, particularly the young man walking on the street, and if you honk, they would turn around with a red hot anger eyes and they look at it as if they would burn you. Like, Kalyavan was burnt by our Muchukunda. That pastime runs into your head. Oh, hopefully he's not Muchukunda. So for trivial issues, people become, and of course, you might have seen news where people fight and kill each other even for 100 rupees and whatnot. Parushyam means harsh, very harsh, cutting speech, which really hurts others. Evacha agnyanam chabhijatasya. And the sixth quality is ignorance. What does ignorance means? They don't know what to do and what not to do. And second, whatever they do it whimsically, whatever their mind dictates, like this. And a classic example, and the person which definitely deserves some attention, who we have not given any attention all through the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, who is one of the key player for this Bhagavad Gita manifest, and it will be not appropriate for us to glorify such a person who played a key role for the war of Kurukshetra and also created a situation favorable for all of us where Bhagavad Gita's message could be sung. Any idea who that person I'm talking to? Would definitely deserve a reference at this point of time, because now rest of the chapter is going to talk about him, demonic qualities. And that is none other than, yes, what's the answer? Duryodhan. We have already glorified Dhritarashtra in the very beginning. Now we'll focus a little bit on the son of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhan. Very interesting. When Duryodhana was born, there were so many ill omens, which Vidura understood. And he went and complained to Dhritarashtra, but Dhritarashtra did not hear. Something very interesting. It is mentioned in the scriptures when there are earthquakes, when there are volcanic eruptions, like you have this cyclone coming, when there are this kind of natural disasters, it actually indicates that a very big demon have taken birth on this planet. Now, some of you who don't know this may not believe it, but it's a fact actually. To give you one personal life experience, of course, I would not call experience, but a learning. Just like when a very great soul passes away from this world, it is said that the shooting star incident takes place. I remember I was a very young boy, and we were living in a place called Kannauj in Uttar Pradesh. I was a very, very young boy at that time. And in those days, people generally used to go onto the terrace and sleep because, the night used to be wonderful on the terrace. Not exactly, because there was no electricity most of the time. So you're forced to go to the terrace. Anyways, it's always good to sleep underneath the sky. Anyways, I remember I was there and suddenly I saw a few shooting stars, which was very, very rare, very, very rare. This is, I would say, Loka Praman. I don't really have a Vedic reference verse right now, But just to tell you, so I immediately turned to my mother and asked. I was very young. I must be in junior KG or something, seriously. So don't say now junior KG means you must be speculating. No, no, I remember a lot of things, okay? So I remember, so I turned to my mother and asked, what is this? I've never seen this kind of shooting stars. And then she said, oh, it indicates some very great personality must have passed away from this world. And very next morning, we got a message that previous evening at 10 o'clock, a very great saint who was a great devotee of Lord Ram passed away, who lived in Kannauj only. Kannauj is also a very holy place, who lived in Kannauj and he passed away around 10 o'clock. And this incident was somewhere between 10 to 10:30. So I'm just connecting it that, actually my mother had no clue of it. There were no TV channels those days. There was no Republic TV crew running around from door to door or the G News crew running here and there. There were no news channels. So how did she know? Of course, it was Lok Praman. But actually, next morning when we got to know, it was interesting. Similarly, actually, this is mentioned in scriptures when there are volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, cyclones, with which our western part of country and then our eastern part of the country is hit with, which actually indicates demonic people taking birth. And something like that happened at the time of appearance of Duryodhan also. So we'll discuss more about Duryodhan. Where's the marker? So to move forward, Arjuna began to ponder. He said, my dear Lord, does it mean my desire to take part in war is also due to demoniac temperament? I'll be responsible for killing so many people. Is it because I'm greedy? Is it because I also have demonic propensities? The Lord Shri Krishna says in the 5th verse, Arjuna, no, 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 not at all. It is not about you. Ma sucha sampadam daivim abhijatosi pandava. You are born of divine qualities. And to once again convince Arjuna, then Lord Shri Krishna says in the 6th verse, when Arjuna again pondered, but my dear Lord, how my fighting will not be demoniac? And then Krishna said, Arjuna, please understand, there are two kinds of living entities born in this world. One is called as divine, other called as demoniac. You are of divine nature. There is no question of you acting demoniacally. So Lord Shri Krishna explains that how two living entities are born, divine and demoniac. And Srila Prabhupada quotes a history, quotes about an incident that happened at the time of the creation where both divine and demoniac are born from the same father, Prajapati, Kashyapa Muni, who had 13 wives who were daughters of Daksha. Among that, there were two daughters or two wives of Kashyapa by the name of Diti and Aditi. Aditi gave birth to 12 Adityas. That became 12 demigods. And Diti gave birth to Daityas. And that led to the demoniac race like that. And that is what Srila Prabhupada explains on the subject matter of how divine and demoniac are born into this world. So, how do we understand who is divine and demoniac? Because it seems sometimes we do have this demonic propensities, or else sometimes it seems that our action is cruel, just like Arjuna was wondering, I'm going to fight, I'm going to kill so many people. It seems demoniac. And many times people are confused about Arjuna's action. Arjuna's action in terms of his act of compassion to say that I want to quit. Many people say that was glorious, and Krishna unnecessarily instigated Arjuna to fight that led to the death of so many. So how do we understand exactly who is divine, who is demonic, what is the dividing line? And that is what Lord Shri Krishna is going to explain now. The dividing line between a demon and one who is divine is adherence to scriptures. It is not a subject matter of one's behavior. One must be sincerely trying to follow the scriptures. That is what the dividing line is. And this is what Lord Shri Krishna is going to elaborate in the next section of this chapter. So once again, to understand this, Arjuna's action were not demoniac. His act of fighting in the war and killing so many people were not demonic, killing Bhishma Pitama and responsible for the death of so many other great personalities were not demoniac. Why? Because he followed the version of scriptures. A version of scripture means he followed the Lord himself. And that is a version of scripture. That's the reason. His act externally could seem demoniac. It was not demonic because he abided by the scriptures, which means we individuals at large are narrow-minded. But scriptures gives you opportunity to make to make you broad-minded. For us, it develops our perspectives. So at our level, with our understanding, we may claim or blame somebody for being cruel or hard-hearted, but may not be necessarily. That could be an act of service to the humanity. And how the fight of Kurukshetra was an act of service to the humanity, because by that dharma was established. If that would not have happened, then adharma would have flourished, and everything would have got destroyed. That's the point. So here now in the second section, Lord Shri Krishna begins to explain about the demons, their opinions and their outlooks. And this is something I would say very, very important section. To reassure Arjuna that he is of a divine nature, Krishna will distinguish the activities, mentality, and the qualities of one who has demonic propensities. And Krishna explains that such kind of living entities, demonic people, are put into the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease again and again. Well, I know to those who are liberal-minded, who are non-believer, for them it will become another excuse to call Lord harsh, insensitive, to blame religion, to promote this kind of a separatism, to say that one person deserves a better treatment, other person deserves punishment. But the point is, Lord Shri Krishna explains, they being cast into hellish planet is for their own good, because that is how they learn their lessons. Lato ke bhoot, baaton se nahi mante. Like Dhritarashtra, imagine, even after hearing the whole Bhagavad Gita, did not change. He needed Vidura to come and beat him with a stick. Then only he could have understood. Otherwise, it was not possible. What can be done? So demonic philosophies, mentality, and activities generate immeasurable anxiety for the individual, and they cause great disruption in the wider society. So the punishment for the demoniac is not punishment to the individual, but is a treatment of the diseased mentality. But let's take a look at first of all, what are these demonic symptoms? So we're going to divide it into three sections. Let's focus on nature and activities, which Lord Shri Krishna explains in 3 verses, 7, 17th, and also 9th and 10th verse. So let's take a look. What do Krishna talks about it? So if in case you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, so you may look at the 7th verse. I'll give you the synopsis of it. So in 7th verse, Krishna says, such people do not know pravrittim cha nivrittim cha. They do not know what is right, what is wrong. Second, na saucham. They do not have any cleanliness. They do not take bath. Have you seen people who do not take bath for weeks together? They keep putting X effect on their body, to look as if they are fresh. By the way, what is the history of this whole invention of deodorant? Anyone knows? Yes or no? It is created for people like this only. Because in the 16th century, up to 16th century, the condition of Europe was such, people living literally like animals, they would not take bath for 6 months straight. Now, what is the reason given why they would not take bath? Because it used to be very cold. So they would, they would not take bath. Now, if you don't take bath, we all have an experience of our body is not something which generates a pleasant smell. It often generates foul smell. So imagine if you haven't taken bath for 6 months, then how do you engage in sense gratification? You cannot. Nobody can attract opposite gender if your body is smelling so foul. Just to ensure the sense gratification continues, so the intelligent beings of that time, not utilizing their mind and intelligence service of the Lord, rather they thought how we can flourish sense gratification, created deodorants, so that people can spray in the morning and continue with their sense gratificatory activity. So uncleanliness, na saucham, they do not take bath, and physical cleanliness is missing. Along with that, there's no internal cleanliness, which means their mind and thoughts are always absorbed about sexual fantasies primarily. That is the idea of saucham, internal cleanliness. So their mind is so much absorbed or degraded with such kind of petty pleasures of the world, and where they offend and insult the opposite gender in different ways. Na saucham, and there is no charo, there is no proper behavior. Again, no proper behavior. This is again in the context of no proper behavior with opposite gender. Of course, no proper behavior with senior citizens, no proper behavior with kids, no proper behavior with guests. A classic example is once again Duryodhan. He disrespected Krishna, who has come as a peace messenger, by trying to arrest him, which is against the codes of ethics for a king. How to to deal with if any guest has come. Now, how did he behave with Draupadi? Duryodhan Draupadi case, if you see, how severely he insulted his own bhabi. Now, you take a case of Duryodhan with Draupadi, we can also take a case of Arjuna with Urvashi. Now, Urvashi, one of the most beautiful. Why she's considered the most beautiful? Because she's born of the body of Narayan Rishi. When Indra got afraid looking at the austerities of Narayan Rishi, he sent a Cupid, Kamadevta, and who came along with many apsaras. But Narayan Rishi did not got agitated at all. And then a beautiful damsel came out of the body. Of them prominent was Urvashi, who seeing that Cupid fainted. And then finally they understood this is Lord Vishnu only, and then Urvashi came to the Indraloka. That Urvashi came to Arjuna at the middle of the night, when such kind of sensual tendencies are at its peak, came to Arjuna and proposed that we should enjoy. And Arjuna said, I have heard from Chanakya Pandit, Matravat Paradhareshu. I'm going to say, of course, Arjuna didn't say like this. I'm going to say that's what the Chanakya Pandit teaches, and that's what is taught in our Vedic education, that every other woman should be treated as a mother. Matravat Paradhareshu Paradraveshu Lostravat, and others' property should be treated as a garbage like this. Atmavas Sarvabhuteshu Yapashyati Sapandata, and he treats everyone equally. In other words, offers respect. So in case of Duryodhan, there was no Matravat Paradhareshu. He didn't treat it like that. So that is indicating meaning of here of no proper behavior of demonic people. And of course, no truth is found in them. They're expert in lying. Next, in the 17th verse, it is mentioned, such people are always full of pride, and they perform sacrifices in name only, like ritualistic. Just for the name and fame. Just like, for example, Duryodhan, once again, because he's the main character of today's discussion. Duryodhan, he was so envious of Yudhishthira Maharaj, he wanted to always imitate him and prove himself to be better. Yudhishthira Maharaj had performed one of the greatest sacrifices called Rajasuya and earned a lot of fame all over the world, a lot of praise from his own citizens. Duryodhana wanted to do something equally like that or more powerful, so he can also earn fame and praise of his citizens. And that is why he performed one of the greatest sacrifices called as Vaishnava sacrifice. If you would have to ask why did Yudhishthira Maharaj perform Rajasuya Yajna, he had no intention for name and fame. He did it for the pleasure of the Lord, to please the Lord. For Duryodhana, there was no objective of pleasing the Lord, because he was the Lord. He considered himself to be the Lord. He wanted all the fame and name for himself. So that's the idea, ritualistic activities. And other things, they do not follow any rules and regulations in the 17th verse, which means they just don't follow any Vedic scriptures. They have no faith in austerity, authority, and they make their own rules of worship. For example, modern day Durga worship and Ganesh Chaturthi is just one example. We can give many examples like that. And then in the 9th verse, Lord Shri Krishna explains about Ugra Karma. What is that? Such people perform actions which are unbeneficial and horrible works meant to destroy the world. So what are their activities? Which only produces more suffering for the humanity and other living entities. What is the scientific advancement has given us? More pollution, more destruction of the world, more terrible weapons, unlimited supply of nuclear weapons and whatnot, more fear in the world about destruction. The technology has given us automated slaughter machine. Now, where earlier few animals were killed. Now, every day, thousands and millions of animals are being killed. According to one report, every year, 100 billion animals are killed. Can you imagine? 100 billion animals. And then people ask why there are so many diseases and suffering. What do you expect when we kill so many innocent animals like that? And then in the 10th verse, Lord Shri Krishna explains the mentality. They take shelter of insatiable lust, and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige. Insatiable lust, Ravana is the best example, who was slave to his senses, so much so when Maricha warned him that you should never ever even think of doing anything to Sita, who is the wife of Lord Ram. I have had a bad experience with Lord Ram myself, so don't mess around. Yet Ravana could not understand. And he explained Maricha what had happened, long, long ago, when he had tried to disturb the fire sacrifice of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra. Sorry, our devotee Vishwakarma name was ringing in my head. So I'm like, no, no, Vishwakarma, it was Vishwakarma. So like that. So that's the point, insatiable lust. Then they're always an illusioned, and they perform unclean work and they're attracted by the impermanent. What is illusion? Which means they're always in anxiety and cannot tell what is right, what is wrong. They call wrong to be right, right to be wrong, and that's why people say modern advancement. We are advancing. How are we advancing when people are more and more distressed, more and more suicides, more and more divorces, more and more abortions, more and high rate of crimes? Is that advancement? Earlier, there were joint families. People were so happy within their family, nobody needed a social media account. Now, they're a nuclear family, nobody talks to each other. Everyone needed a social media account because some people, we need to interact with anyone. Then there were respect for elders in previous generation. Now you have old age homes where old age people are dumped. There was access to fresh air, water, and food. Now, where is access to fresh air, water, and food? Everything is inorganic or contaminated. And then finally, their mentality is attracted by the impermanent. Srila Prabhupada explains such atheistic people chasing after sense desires or sense gratification ultimately become more and more attached or attracted to sexual fantasies and wealth. And what to speak about the situation in today's world in terms of sexual fantasies, how much criminal activities. It is explained out of 100% traffic of internet, 96% is pornography. Can you imagine? 96%. Now, we have never thought probably how these men and women are brought onto the screen. If you look into more in depth of it, so many boys and girls are kidnapped in the adolescent age, and they've been taken away forcefully away from their families, and they're put into the sinful business where they're forced to act in such kind of acts against their will, and just to fulfill someone's fantasies online. And like this are the demonic nature and activities being explained. Next aspect is of their philosophy and realizations, where in text number 8, so we have grouped the verses according to sections. So that's the reason I'm going through random verses, but the section is clear, so you get it. Now, Krishna says, Asatyam api pratishtham te jagadahu anishwaram. So what is their philosophy? They say world is unreal with no God in control. Yes, this is a state of modern education. They say everything is false, the world is unreal, and there is no God. And that's the reason they teach philosophies like Big Bang, Charles, Richard Dawkins, chance theory, and so forth. So they say, we learn from the education that we've gone through, school and college education. They teach us there is no superior control, there is no existence of soul, there's only one life, live to the fullest, and do whatever you want to do it. This is what your life is meant to do. And on top of it, look at the movies or even the education. Everything in this world is credited to a human being. Law of gravity, Newton. Isn't it? Everything. The advancement against to the human. We created, but they don't give the credit to the Lord who actually have created the source, or who is actually the source of it. Then in 11th verse, it is mentioned their realization, which means their goal is sense gratification. What is the life of a demon is described in 11th and 12th word. verse, which is said, their only goal of life is sense gratification more and more. They have no faith in karma or next life, and they perform all sinful actions or activities just to gratify their gross senses, like that. For example, Dhritarashtra, isn't it? What was his goal of life? To remain the king at any and every cost, at the cost of losing 100 sons and destroying the whole kingdom. Not only the whole kingdom, literally whole world. 60 crore people died and equal number of people went missing. Literally the whole world population got wiped out because of one person's, you can say, uh, what do we call the word? Uh, Not the determination to say precisely, uh, arrogance, you can call it. I'm missing the word, but one person's arrogance, that is the Dhritarashtra, like that. So, like that. Next is they try to take God out of picture, which is the 16th verse. And whatever they teach, the idea is to remove God. The God does not exist, as I mentioned before. And then coming to the third aspect is after their realizations and actions, what is their mentality? In text number 13 to text number 15, their mentality is described. I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, I am powerful, I am perfect. Everything is being done by my potencies, my energies. My enemies are defeated, and I'm happy. Sounds like Hiranyakashipu and the little Hiranyakashipus of the modern day, who claims my science, my medicine, my medical field, my engineering, I did this, I made that. But they don't understand about the things which they're not able to do. Just like they don't even have a control on their bodies and the functions of it. Yet they say, I am the controller, like that. They take shelter of the insatiable lust, which we have also discussed in the case of, Ravana. And they're envious of the Lord, text number 19, and scriptures. Like Shishupal and Dantavakra, so much they hated Krishna. And what did Krishna do to them? Nothing. So they're envious because they could not accept the praise of the Lord. So like that, they're always envious of the Lord and scriptures, and all by their actions and behavior, they try to minimize or discredit the existence of the Lord. What to speak about the Lord himself in that way. And envious of the Lord. And interestingly, just a side note, you'll find people who are envious of the Lord, particularly Vishnu, but you never find people envious of Devatas. In fact, you find people worshipping Devatas, yet envious of the Supreme Lord. Just a side note to think about. So, what are the result of the demoniac work? Krishna explains in the 16th verse, they are perplexed by immeasurable anxiety, like Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana could not sleep for 13 years, not because they were sent to the forest. They were in the palace. Pandavas went to the forest, so they were in anxiety. What will happen when they come back? Next is they're bound by a network of desires. They're caught up in WWW, which is a web of desires, a web of Maya, Moha Jal. They're deluded, bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger. In other words, their desire has no limit. The unlimited desires they have cultivated. They're always planning to increase the stock of wealth, and they think that all his advancement is due to current endeavor and not because of law of karma. And whoever comes into my way is my enemy, and unless I destroy my enemy, I will not sit peacefully. And they manufacture their own processes of yajna or sacrifices. Just like you see the example of a staircase here, Ravana was trying to build a staircase from planet Earth to heaven, where he thought people will go without performing pious activities. Similarly, the modern day scientists are trying to build spaceships, and people who are more foolish than the scientists have already purchased lands in Mars and Moon. So I don't know to whom did they pay money. Chandrama Devta or which Devta they paid money for that, like this. And then they fall down into hellish, abominable life and demoniac species. So the result is because they're envious of the Lord, thus they're envious of the self. That is a version of Ishopanishad, where it says they're the killer of the self. And they are the one who actually commit the highest abuse, self-abuse. Commit violence on others' bodies as well as their own body. They're always envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they blaspheme against real religion. They put forward false arguments to disprove the existence of the Lord, and they think themselves to be totally independent and powerful in every action. And no one is more powerful than them like this. So, like this, they spend their life living in illusion. Finally, death, representative of the Lord, comes and slaps them and shakes them up from their harsh reality, or shakes them up, wake them up from the illusion to show them the harsh reality that the higher power exists, the Lord exists. You cannot defeat death. We have been hearing from so long the science will soon make us deathless. They are very close to find a solution how a man would not have to die. But whatever research they have done so far, it only shows they have only find means how a person can die soon and not die later on. That is the point. Forget about making us eternal. So, what are the progressive stages of demonic life? In other words, how do person become more and more demoniac? It all begins with wrong philosophy, which means wrong education. Unfortunately, all of us and the generation today and the upcoming generation will be forced to go through this kind of education. Therefore, parents have a great responsibility to teach them the science of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ramayana, and Mahabharata so that they can be saved. And they learn how to use the modern education only for their livelihood and maintenance, not to take it for real. So, demonic philosophy, which means the modern education, breeds demonic mentality. How many of you agree? At least let's talk about until the 12th standard. Whatever we studied, there were never ever any credit given to the Lord. In fact, all the credit was given to human. And with that mentality, we begin to challenge the existence of the Lord. Because what is the use of God if everything is done by human? Yes or no? How many of you agree with it? Subtly, if not grossly, they made us atheistic. That's the reason every young man or woman challenges and asks, "Can you show me God if you think God exists?" As if they can see the Newton, Albert Einstein, who gave the previous, the discoveries like that. The demonic mentality leads to demonic activity. Demonic education creates demonic mentality. Demonic mentality leads to demonic activities. There are abundant of examples that we see in the modern society. And this demonic activities leads to demonic results, which means cyclones, pandemics, a pandemic like COVID crisis, war, famine, and whatnot. Like this, demonic people, as we begin our discussion with, they are cause of immeasurable anxiety for oneself and also for everyone in the society. So Arjuna began to thought, how mighty Lord, how do these people became so demoniac? And they are why they are put into this hellish life. Lord says, Arjuna, it is a matter of their choice. They have chosen to be. The choice, it's their choice. We all have a choice to escape to the supreme destination, which Lord Shri Krishna would explain ahead. And we also have a choice to disregard the message of Bhagavad Gita and continue to put faith in the modern education, the modern scientists who are actually meant to destroy our lives. And Lord Shri Krishna explains, Arjuna, please understand, there are three gates to hell. If we make a choice to take shelter of these three qualities, we are embarking on a journey or on a life of a demoniac person. So, what are these three things which we need to be very careful of? It is called as Trividham Narakasedam Dwaram Nashanamaatmanaha Kamakrodas Tatha Lobas Tasmad Etatrayam Tayajat. The more Trividham Naraka, the three gates to hell, Dwaram, doors, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, lust, anger, and greed. One should be careful of it. Lord Shri Krishna, I've already spoken of the subject matter of lust, and I've said the younger brother of lust is Krodha. And lust, if it is fulfilled, it leads to greed. It all begins with Kama. And therefore, Lord Shri Krishna has already elaborated on the subject matter in the third chapter. But Lord Shri Krishna said lust is a insatiable and it's literally acts like an eternal enemy for the soul. And to defeat it, we need to understand where it hides. What are the strategic location? And Lord Shri Krishna said this lust hides in senses, mind, and intelligence. And Lord Shri Krishna gave us a three-step formula to defeat the lust. The essence, the gist of it was to follow the ABCD formula. Regularly take association of saintly people, read wisdom literature, cultivate spiritual knowledge, that is, chant Hare Krishna, that is mantra meditation, which purifies our mind, and honor Krishna Prasadam. These four activities we need to be engaging in every day. This should not be a bi monthly event, but an everyday activity. When we do so, that is how we'll save ourselves, protect ourselves from entering into the doors of these three: Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Because if we don't do so, the association outside is so horrible and terrible, it will only inspire us in Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Yes or no? How many of you experience when you talk to outside people, your mind and senses become more agitated? Either it becomes filled with lust or anger, or you become more greedy. Well, that's at least my experience, and that's what I wanted to share with all of you here, that the formula to save ourselves from these three things that Bhagavad Gita explains is ABCD. To conclude, Lord Shri Krishna once again gives a solution here, and he again says cultivation of spiritual knowledge is the means to protecting oneself. So, key to freedom is scriptures. Why is scripture so important? They give directions on how to exit the material world. Just like in chapter 15, Lord Shri Krishna taught us how this material world is like a hotel room, but not a real home. In the 5th chapter, 22nd verse, Krishna again taught us through Bhagavad Gita that how the desire to gratify senses only leads to misery. And then in the 8th chapter, Lord Shri Krishna once again explained about the nature of material world. While describing the problems, Lord Shri Krishna also explained the solutions for it. So, how does this scriptures helps us? They teaches us how to regulate our senses, and they also helps us to elevate one to goodness and beyond. So, rules and regulation, I'll just speak on it for 2 minutes and we conclude for today. Rules and regulation is what people get terrified when you talk about rules and regulation. They say our scriptures have too much rules and regulation. But in second chapter, verse number 64, if I'm correct, Krishna says they are the rules for freedom, rules and regulations of freedom. What it means? Imagine all of you get into start your imaginative, part of your mind, and now think yourself playing a football. When you're playing a soccer or a football, what all do you need to play a game? You need a goal where you need to know where to put the ball, isn't it? You need an opponent, that we have anyways a lot of opponent in this world, so don't worry about it. And you need a football, you need a referee. But there's one more thing which is very, very important that you need, is a boundary. If you don't have a boundary while you're playing a football, you might find yourself after half an hour playing a football in a different part of the city, which means you're completely away from the goal. The goal has become completely out of your sight, and now you're playing a football. You also don't know why you're playing a football, and that becomes very boring, disinterested. While if you're playing within the rules and regulations or the boundaries of the football stadium, then you can very clearly see your goal and can enjoy the game and actually win the game. That is the point. Rules and regulations are actually means of our freedom, are not meant to bog us down. This is just initial thoughts that we get when there are rules and regulations that will make my life restrictive. My point is, your life is already restrictive. You're already slave to the senses. You're already bound by the modes of material nature. What else do you want? But this is the means to, gain freedom or independence of these bondages. So rules and regulations, scriptures are not meant to bog us down, but meant to empower us. But yes, there are a lot of Vidhi Vidhan, a lot of people talk about according to Karma Kanda. That is not what Hare Krishnas or spiritualist practice. Srila Prabhupada have given us very simple formula of, fasting only on the days of the Vishnu's avatars, incarnations, or Ekadashi. The only rules and regulation is follow the regulated principles, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy. Live a happy life. That's the only thing, not, something very complicated. To conclude with, Lord Shri Krishna says in the concluding verses 16th chapter, Ye Shastra Vidhim Usrajya Vartate Kamakarataha Nasa Siddhim Abhapnoti Na Sukham Na Param Gatim. Who discards scriptural injunction and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. Those who disregard away the scriptures, they only continue to suffer. Is following Shastra enough? Krishna says the essence of all Vedic knowledge is to be devotee of the Lord. That is the point. So, following scriptures enough? No. It is only good as long as you take to the process of surrendering to Krishna, following the spiritual principles like that. So, with that, we conclude for today, where the acronym for today's chapter was God, where, sorry, not God, dog, where we talked about divine and demonic mentalities, and then we talked about, the O was standing for opinions and the attitudes of the demonic people, where we saw their mentality, their philosophy, their activities, their realizations. We had discussed a little bit in detail. I believe we did justice to that. And finally, to the subject matter of three gates to hell: Krama, Kam, Krodha, and greed, Lobha, are said to be three gates to hell. And this is how a person becomes demoniac. We need to be careful of it. How do we defeat this Kama, Krodha, Lobha? By cultivating spiritual knowledge, by following with the scriptures, or in totality, following the ABCD formula. With that, we conclude here for today, and tomorrow we meet for the second last episode of this Gita Essence series, where we'll be discussing from 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the topic for tomorrow's session is lifestyle management. You can consider today's topic as self-management. Tomorrow's would be lifestyle management. And with that, we conclude for today. Thank you so much for joining us again for this Gita episode. Back to the host. If in case there are any questions or comments for today's.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session on self management where we could understand what is the divine qualities. And I could understand, like, that is only my understanding, that Krishna spent a lot time on the demoniac nature. Maybe like in the Kali Yuga, there are lots of, so that's why we should be able to more. We should be able to understand more easily, and like there was only one slide dedicated to the divine qualities and the detailed discussion on the demonic aspects of that.
First, we
So
need to know the don'ts.
yeah.
First, when you go to a doctor, has to properly diagnose the disease. So there's a lot of discussion on the disease. So right now we are in diseased condition. So we need to know that we are diseased. So therefore, Krishna had elaborated, and we also took time to elaborate on that. Once we understand that, once we take to the solution, even if we don't have divine qualities, it all will manifest. So taking a right course of action is very important. That's the reason we had this elaborate discussion.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Before we jumped into the question and answer session, we would like to congratulate our top scorers of Gita Essence Quiz, which is for chapters 7 to 12. And we would like to congratulate Miss Jyoti Nathani ji, Jay Koshadikar ji, Raj Aduri ji, Vrukshika Dumre ji, Anjana Kak ji, Marshall Kaul ji, Meenal Patel ji, Samyukta Gopalakrishnan ji. Moving ahead, many congratulations to Lakshika Dumre ji, Smita Kasit ji, Darshan Mundra ji, Vijay Kumar Poddar ji, Shri Fani Shushma ji, Geeta Agrawal ji. Moving ahead, many congratulations to the another set of our top scorers: Leela Nandani ji, Rukmini Devi Dasi Nair ji, Sachin Kasit ji, Rohit Balarao ji, Dr. A.V. Raghavendra Rao ji, and Munira ji. So many congratulations to all top scorers. We are very glad to see your commitment to do all these quizzes. And thank you so much for your wonderful participation, because tomorrow we are moving ahead to the second last session. So it's been a wonderful journey, because chapter 18 is actually more of the conclusion only, whereas chapter 17 is going to be lifestyle management. So we look forward to have tomorrow's session, that is going to be lifestyle management. Now moving to the Q&A session, we have first question from our very own Midhavni Sakhi Devi Dasi Mataji. So Mataji is asking, when things do not go the way that we plan, we get angry and in the spell of anger do things that we regret later on. How to develop the pause between emotion,
Muted.
reaction, and
Hare Krishna. Am I
Hare,
audible?
Yes, Prabhuji, you are audible.
Oh, really? I thought I was muted. Okay.
No, Prabhuji.
So, can you say that? Okay, let me just read the question. When things do not go the way that we plan, we get angry, and in the spell of anger, do things that we regret later on. How do we develop the pause between emotion, reaction, and response? Please advise. Well, we have discussed the subject matter before also. So, there is a space between the response that we give and the stimuli, and that space has been explained wherein lies our freedom of our growth and of our well-being. So we need to exercise that space. We need to build up on that space where we have a where we're able to make a right choice, and that only comes on the platform of goodness. Because in passion and ignorance, that space literally does not exist because it's an animalistic platform. Animal is identified with, they respond instantaneously. So, it's an impetus by which they act. For passion, they may have that opportunity to make a choice, but yet they are so absorbed into their own, the desires and agendas, they also become helpless. It is only the platform of goodness where they have an ability to think. Just like think about Arjuna, although he's at the battlefield, yet he's able to think about his response to fight or not. Yes or no? The stimuli was there to fight. The conches have been already blown. Nobody was thinking at the Kaurava side, should I fight or not? Yet Arjuna took a time to think about it. He asked Krishna to drive his chariot to the middle of the battlefield. He used his free will to make a right decision, to think what is right for me, and accordingly made a call. So it all begins with cultivating mode of goodness. So question is, how do we cultivate mode of goodness? As we have discussed before also, take advantage of the early morning hours, make best use of it, and try to practice spiritual culture of chanting and reading and hearing. If we do so, gradually we'll be able to embrace more and more of mode of goodness and save ourselves from such kind of reactions that we may give. Other aspect is, when we cultivate mode of goodness, we also cultivate simultaneously the tolerance, the quality of tolerance, because situation, which means stimuli, will not be in our control. The stimuli, if not in our control, when we understand this, we begin to tolerate the situation that may come to our side, knowing that the situations are not in my control. At least I should tolerate. Try to. Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Prabhuji, you are audible, but you are not visible, so we request
Yeah,
you to.
no problem. This is called as Brahman realization. Only Akashvani right now. So fine, we'll go with continue the Kashwadi for the time being. So
Ji, Prabhuji.
that's
So,
the point of what we also cultivate tolerance. Anyways, yes.
thank you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you, Madhavni Mataji, for asking such an important and practical question which we face on a day-to-day basis. Moving ahead to the next question. Next question is by Naveen Tahiliani ji. Is asking, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, considering we all have the same father, Lord Krishna, why people on different parts of the world are complete different from others, like white, brown? Is it because of evolution or something else?
It's just because of our desires. You know, a lot of people like to be brown. I saw when I was studying in America, a lot of fair-skinned, white-skinned men and women would go to this what they call as massage parlor or whatnot, and they would go and get their body tan. They'll, I don't know what they exactly call it, suntan or something, and they'll pay to get it brown. So next time they get probably birth in Asia somewhere. So these 8.4 million species that we have, all varieties that we have, it's the extent where the living entity can desire different types of kind of life forms. So that's all has been fulfilled by the will of the Lord. Beyond that we cannot think, and it all includes our limits of desires. There are people who love to fly, the people who love to swim. All right, you take birth next time in the ocean only. Those who love to fly, no problem, you take birth on some on the branch of some tree, as a child of a crow or pigeon, then you fly. That's what it is all about. Okay, that's the reason of so much variety.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So, with this, we have exhausted all queries.
So thank you so much for being part of this program that is going on. So on coming Monday, we'll have a question answer session and a concluding session or Thanksgiving as such. But that session will be on a Zoom, which will not be up on this platform. The details of it will be shared soon, probably on the 18th session when we have the as such the final session of the series. And that session is because many of us could not interact, got to know each other, and some questions which would be pending. So we'll share the details and we'll meet for that session over Zoom on Monday evening. For the time being, we'll meet tomorrow for the 17th episode. Hare Krishna, and do solve the quizzes. The quiz will be available on your student portal right now. So immediately go back. Just it'll take hardly 5 minutes of your time to solve it. And those who solve all the quizzes at the end of the course, they'll get the certificate. All right. Thank you once again. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Thank you so much to all our audience who have joined from the different platforms of Facebook as well as YouTube. Although we are concluding this series, but we have already informed and announced earlier also that we have upcoming lots of series which are on Bhakti Life, which are on self-development course, as well as we have ongoing online competition where your kids as well as you can participate. So we look forward to have a long-term association with all of you. Hare Krishna.